$1 billion to build it. $10 billion to actually fly it. Same telescope, that is not a rounding error. That is a 10x overrun on the most celebrated instrument in the sky. Park this, because it quietly decides everything today. There's one line on a funding request that gets it approved or gutted, and it's not the total. We come back to it.
Quick map check first. The people domain is behind us. We're deep in process now, 41% of your exam, the technical core. We've planned the work, scoped it, staffed it, and bought what we had to buy. This is task 6, where all of that finally turns into money.
On paper, this one looks friendly. Fund it, track it, defend it. Money in, money watched, money justified. 3 little verbs. How hard can it be? And it comes right after the tasks we've already walked. Planning, scope, resources, procurement. All of that produced numbers. This is the task where the numbers have to add up and hold up. Here's how every experienced manager I know actually does it. You pad. Quietly. Every line item gets a cushion. The estimate says 40,000, you write 50. The vendor might slip, the scope might creep, and the one thing that ends careers is standing in front of a sponsor explaining an overrun. So you salt a little fat into everything, and you're never that person. Honestly, it feels responsible. Your sponsor hates surprises more than delays. A padded plan almost never comes up short, so nobody yells at you. It's the safest feeling thing you can do with a budget.
And I want to be fair to that because it comes from real scar tissue. Everyone at this desk has watched a thin, honest estimate blow up and take somebody's credibility down with it. The padding feels like armor, but look at what actually flew. That telescope everyone points to as the great budget disaster went from about $1 billion to nearly 10. Delayed for over a decade. And it's arguably the most successful science instrument ever built. It didn't pad its way to orbit. It's the whole paradox of this task.
That paradox is exactly what the exam is testing. On this exam, money isn't about the size of the number. A project that ran 10 times over can absolutely be the right answer, and a project that landed exactly on budget can be the wrong one if it hit that number by starving the thing that mattered. What they grade is whether you can defend every dollar. Webb is the proof. It went 10 times over, and every one of those dollars got re-justified to Congress, re-baselined and defended, right up until it launched and rewrote astronomy. That's a defended budget, not a lucky one.
The candidates who struggle here treat finance like arithmetic. It's not arithmetic. It's a stack of decisions, and every question is really asking, did you make this decision on purpose, or did you flinch and bury a number where nobody could see it?
Which is why padding isn't a small sin here. A hidden cushion is a decision you refuse to make, smeared across the page so nobody can question it. And a good examiner can always see it. It's the same reason a project can land exactly on budget and still be a failure if it hit that number by quietly cutting the testing or the training or the thing the customer actually paid for. On budget isn't the goal. Delivering the value you promised and being able to prove where every dollar went is the goal.
Here's the encouraging part. You don't need to be a finance person to get this right. You need to make 4 or 5 decisions cleanly and be able to say why. That's a teachable skill, and it's the whole task.
That's the whole build. Estimate honest. Add reserves you can name and point to. Track against a real plan. Defend the number in the room. Fund it, track it, defend it, the way the outline wants it, not the way the hallway does it.
So is padding actually wrong here, or just frowned on?
Wrong, and expensively wrong, which we prove in about 20 minutes. One quick thing first, because people always ask. Every drill we run here has free practice questions and free flashcards waiting at certs.professorerica.com. Go use them after this. Now, all of it, the funding, the reserves, the defending, it hangs off one honest number up front. The estimate, one thing before the next part, and then we move right on. If any of this is clicking, tap that like, hit subscribe, and ring the bell for the next one. It takes a second, it costs nothing, and it helps more than you would think. Before we build a single number, I want to bring in Professor Delacroix, who's joining us at the desk today to help us work through the money side. Professor, glad to have you.
Glad to be here. And building the number is exactly where this task starts, long before you defend anything.
$33 billion, that's what California told voters its high-speed rail would cost. The projection has since climbed past $100 billion, more than 3 times over, and the line still isn't finished. One line, 2 great cities, and an estimate that was basically a wish written on the back of a napkin. And that's where this task actually begins, long before you defend anything. Enabler 1, analyze the financial need. You can't defend a number you never really built.
There's a discipline to building it that the exam quietly loves. Early on, with almost nothing to go on, your estimate is a rough order of magnitude. It could be 25% low or 75% high, and that's fine as long as you say so. As the design firms up, you sharpen it toward a definitive estimate, maybe 5 or 10% either way. The estimate isn't one event, it improves as you learn.
Every estimate ships with its assumptions attached. The rate you used, the productivity you assumed, the currency, the exact scope you priced. When somebody challenges the number 6 months later, those written assumptions are your defense. An estimate with no stated basis is indefensible by design, and that's half of how California's rail and the rest of them get away from you.
How do you actually build a number that's not a wish? There are 4 honest ways, and the exam wants you to know which one fits the moment you're standing in. Analogous. You scale a similar past project. The last migration cost us $60,000. This one is close, call it 60. Parametric. You take a rate and multiply. $40 a square foot times 5,000 feet. Bottom up. You price every single work package and stack them up. And 3-point, where you weight an optimistic, a most likely, and a pessimistic guess, so the uncertainty is baked right in.
They trade off speed against accuracy. Analogous is fast and cheap and the least accurate. It's what you reach for in week 1 when all you've is a comparable. Parametric gets much sharper the moment you've a real rate and a real quantity, and it scales cleanly as the quantity grows. If a server costs $8,000 to stand up and you need 12 of them, that's $96,000 you can actually defend, because the rate came from real invoices, not a feeling.
Bottom-up is the most accurate and the most expensive to produce, because somebody has to sit down and price every task in the breakdown. It's slow. But it's your defensible number, the one that survives a room full of questions, because every dollar traces back to a real piece of work.
3-point is the one people fumble under pressure. You take optimistic plus pessimistic plus most likely, divide by 3, no. Hold on. That's the simple triangular. The one the exam leans on is the beta, or PERT, optimistic plus 4 times most likely plus pessimistic, all over 6. That 4 times weight on the middle is the entire point. It says the likely case matters more than the extremes. Let me run a real one. A database migration. Best case, everything is clean, 40,000. Most likely, 60. Worst case, if the data turns out to be a swamp, 110.
Easy. Average them. 70,000.
Not on this exam. You don't average, you weight the middle. 40 plus 4 times 60 plus 110, all over 6. Kai, read me the bottom line straight off the tape.
65,000, not 70. The weighting drags it toward the likely case and away from my lazy average. $5,000 of difference on one line, and it stacks up fast across a whole project.
That 65 is a number you can defend because you can show the 3 inputs and the formula behind it. That's the whole difference between an estimate and a guess.
Here's the exam trap sitting right on top of all of it. The veteran move is to take that honest 65 and quietly write 80. Pad it. Feels safe. Feels experienced.
That pad is exactly where you lose the question. Because the exam has a real named place for the risk you're scared of. It's not a secret cushion smeared across every line. A pad is a lie you tell your own budget. A reserve is that same fear, but measured, named, and out in the open where you can defend it.
Named, not smeared.
Named, not smeared. Lock that phrase in because it's the hinge this whole task turns on. Now, where does that named money actually live?
Different animal entirely now. Forget padding. Watch where the risk money actually lives.
So where does the risk money actually go? Walk us in.
2 places, and the entire exam lives in the gap between them.
Contingency reserve. This one is for risks you already identified. You saw them coming, you just don't know if they'll hit. It sits inside the cost baseline as real budgeted money, and it's tied straight to your risk register, one line per risk, so anyone can trace exactly why the number is the size it is.
So known unknowns. The vendor might slip, the integration might fight you, and you've set money aside against exactly those named risks.
How much do you put in it? Gut feel?
No, and this is the part people miss. You calculate it. Probability times impact for each risk, summed. A 30% chance of a $40,000 hit is $12,000 in contingency, expected monetary value.
If I have 3 named risks, I run that on each one and add them up. That sum is my contingency, and I can show my work line by line.
Which is the whole difference from a pad. A pad is a feeling. Contingency is measured, and because it's measured, you can defend it. When the sponsor asks why the number is what it is, you hand them the risk register, not a shrug.
Who gets to spend it?
You do, the project manager. No permission needed because it was approved for exactly this.
Without asking anyone at all?
Without asking, the risk you planned for happened, so you use the money you set aside. That's the point of it.
Okay, and the other place?
Management reserve, for the risks nobody saw coming at all. The true unknown unknowns. And that one isn't in your baseline.
How do you even size that? You can't do probability on a risk you can't name.
You can't, so it's top down. A flat percentage of the baseline, often 5 to 10% set by policy and risk appetite.
Let me show the whole stack, because the shape is the entire lesson.
Bottom layer, the work itself. Add contingency, and that's your cost baseline. Add the management reserve on top, and now you've the total project budget.
Notice, the baseline is what you measure performance against. The management reserve sits above it because you can't be held to a number for a risk nobody could name yet.
And who controls that top layer? Not you. Management does, and to even touch it you have to…
Wait, so who literally signs off to use it?
The sponsor or management. And the moment you use it, it moves into your baseline and changes it. That's the tell on the exam. Here's the trap they love to set. An experienced PM sees an overrun and quietly dips into the management reserve to cover it.
Which is wrong.
Dead wrong, that reserve isn't yours. Spending it without approval is a classic exam wrong answer, right next to escalating too fast. So think of it as 2 envelopes. One is in your desk, the contingency, yours to open. The other is in the sponsor's desk, and you have to knock.
The 2 envelopes, yours and theirs.
And this isn't our framing. Look at the task itself. Quantify risk and contingency allocations. And separately, manage financial reserves. 2 enablers, 2 different jobs.
PMI made managing reserves its own enabler. That should tell you how much it matters on exam day.
When there's no real reserve at all, the Suez Canal. They estimated around 200 million francs. It came in past 400 million, more than double.
Opened 1869, and Egypt borrowed to cover every overrun until it went broke and had to sell its canal shares to Britain. No reserve for the labor crises, the disease, the delays, so every single surprise became new debt.
Park that canal. Because there's a moment every funded project hits where the math simply stops fitting and it has a name. Before we close, we walk it.
And the mistake people make at that wall is they just crash the schedule when the actual fix is
Kai, you got cut off right at the wall. The fix you were reaching for is to reconcile against the funding limit, and we're going to walk it properly. Professor Delacroix is back with us for the tracking half.
Glad to be back. And that reconciliation starts earlier than most people think, with knowing exactly what you track against.
First, know what you're even tracking against. The cost baseline isn't one flat number, it's time-phased. It's spread across the calendar.
spend starts slow while you mobilize, ramps hard through the middle when the real work happens, then tails off at closeout. Plot the cumulative and you get that S-curve. That's your plan, quarter by quarter.
Tracking is just laying your actual spend over that curve. Enabler 3, Plan spend tracking across the whole life cycle. Are we on the line, above it, or below it, and why?
Keep one thing straight, because the exam blurs it on purpose. Cash flow isn't the same as cost. Money you've committed on a purchase order isn't money you've spent, and neither is the value you've actually earned. 3 different numbers.
And notice how the whole thing rolls up. Activity estimates gather into work packages into control accounts into the baseline. The step where you set contingency at each of those levels has a name: reserve analysis. Build the budget bottom up, add the reserve, and that aggregation is the determined budget process made official.
The engine that measures all of that precisely is earned value. And we're not doing the math today. It genuinely earns its own episode. For now, hold the concept you measure performance against this baseline.
Because that S-curve is your planned value. When we get to the earned value episode, this is the line every other number gets compared against. Today, just respect that the baseline is a curve, not a single figure.
But here's the wrinkle nobody plans for. The money doesn't show up all at once. It arrives in chunks. A cap each quarter, or each year, or each phase gate.
Annual appropriations, phase funding, a sponsor releasing money in stages so they can pull the plug if it drifts. Completely normal. And it collides head-on with your spending plan.
This is the wall I told you to park. The moment the math stops fitting, your S-curve says spend $140,000 this quarter. The funding cap is $100,000.
There's a $40,000 gap between what the plan needs and what the funding actually allows this quarter.
That's called funding limit reconciliation. And the experienced instinct, crash the schedule to catch up or quietly eat it, is the wrong one.
So what's the right one?
You re-level the work to fit the money. You push some of it into a later period so the spend rate flattens under the cap. In practice, that usually means placing an imposed date constraint into the schedule, on purpose. And notice, you didn't crash anything. Crashing costs more money to go faster, which is the exact opposite of what a funding cap is asking for. The cap wants you slower and cheaper this quarter, not faster and more expensive.
So the funding limit actually reshapes your schedule. The money constraint becomes a date constraint. That's a connection the exam loves and most people never see coming.
And the gap you genuinely can't level away? That doesn't get hidden in a green status report. Enabler 6, you monitor the variance and you take it into the governance process, early.
Which is the exact lesson from the mindset episode. Escalation isn't a failure, it's a threshold. When a variance crosses the line governance set, you raise it, on purpose, not in a panic at the end.
Because hidden gaps compound. The San Francisco Bay Bridge. The 1995 estimate to fix it was $250 million. The new Eastern span alone came in near $6.5 billion, past $13 billion with interest.
That wasn't one catastrophic day. That was years of small variances nobody reconciled out loud, each one quietly rolled forward into the next. A 2% slip here, an unforeseen condition there, a scope add nobody rebaselined. None of them looked fatal on the day. Together they became the most expensive public works project in California history.
Track the truth, and the cap is just a constraint you manage. Hide it, and the cap becomes the thing that sinks you.
Manage it, don't bury it.
Professor Delacroix, thank you. That is the cleanest walk through tracking and the funding cap I have heard.
Anytime. Glad to help.
That is the tracking half locked. 2 envelopes behind us, 1 drill left to go.
Okay, new muscle. You've estimated honest, you've reserved smart, you're tracking clean. None of it matters if you can't defend it in the room.
And defending is 2 enablers the outline names flat out. Plan financial reporting and anticipate future finance challenges. Reporting and forecasting.
Reporting first, and the mistake here is reporting for yourself. A sponsor doesn't want your cost variance index to 3 decimals. They want, are we going to have enough money, yes or no, and when will you know for certain?
You translate, same data, 3 audiences. The finance office gets the indices, the team gets the burn rate, the sponsor gets the 1-sentence answer.
On their cadence, in their format. A committee that meets monthly doesn't want a live dashboard. They want the monthly number clean with the forecast attached. Report the money in their language, on 1 page, where we plan to be, where we actually are, and where we'll land.
And that forecast is the second enabler, anticipate. Say more, because this is the one experienced managers choke on.
Anticipate means you're not just reporting where you're reporting where you'll end up. Your estimate at completion. A forecast that says we're trending 8% over isn't a confession that you failed, it's the job.
The instinct is to sit on it until you fixed it. Nobody wants to walk in carrying a bad forecast.
That instinct is the whole trap. You see the trend at 8% over and you think, I've got 2 months, I can quietly claw it back before anyone asks, so you say nothing. But finance can't reallocate money they don't know they'll need. A variance you surface early is a decision they can still make. They can move funds, cut scope, or trigger the management reserve through governance. The exact same variance surfaced late is an emergency and a credibility hit. Early, you're a manager giving them options. Late, you're a liability handing them a bill. Same number, opposite outcome.
And that finally pays off the thing Fenrir parked at the very top. The one line on a funding request that gets it approved or gutted. It's the reserve line, the visible one.
Remember the number I told you to hold? Same total, 2 requests. One is a padded lump nobody can question. The other shows the honest estimate, the named contingency, and the management reserve, each one sized to a real stated risk.
Guess which one finance funds? The defensible one, every single time. The padded lump gets cut on site because they can't see what's real, so they assume the whole thing is fat.
But showing the reserve just invites finance to grab it, hide it.
The exact opposite, a hidden buffer, found in an audit, is how you lose every future budget you ever ask for. Transparency plus governance is the protection. The reserve is defended by being visible and justified, not by being secret.
That's what defending actually means. It's not arguing louder. It's being able to point at any single line and say, this is the estimate, this is the risk it covers, and this is who approved it. A PM who can do that keeps their budget. A PM who can't loses it the first time it gets questioned.
Fine, visible wins. I hate it.
And the price of a number you couldn't defend? Scotland's Parliament. They walked in estimating £40 million. So was that 40 million just a lie told to sell the building?
Let me fix the question first. It wasn't a lie. It was an estimate built on a design that didn't exist yet. No finished scope, no baseline, no reserve, no defense. And when there's nothing to defend a number with, it does this.
So show the reserve, defend the dollar. That's true for almost every project you'll ever run. Almost. There's one kind where locking a big reserve up front is actually the wrong answer, and we close the whole thing on it.
Defend the number, and the number defends you. All right, prove it. 2 scenarios, exam-shaped. Let's drill it.
Two scenarios, real exam shape, and the whole point still stands. The reserve you reach for tells the examiner everything about you. So let's drill it. Scenario 1. A vendor delay risk you logged months ago, one you actually reserved for, just triggered. You're going over on that line. What does the PM do?
Escalate to the sponsor for more money? It feels responsible. You're being transparent.
Or cut scope to claw it back. That protects the budget number, which is what they hired you to protect.
Both sound like a competent adult. Both are wrong. Erica, land it.
Both are wrong, and for the same reason. You identified this risk, you funded it. You used the contingency reserve, and you don't ask permission because it was already granted. The filter step is respect the process. The money is already yours, so escalating just tells the sponsor you forgot you planned for this, and cutting scope punishes the customer for a risk you already funded. You draw down the contingency, you log it, and you keep moving.
Scenario 2. A regulation nobody on Earth saw coming lands mid-project, real new cost, and your contingency is already spent. Now what?
Absorb it quietly and try to make it up elsewhere? It keeps the report green.
No, that's the other envelope. This one is a true unknown, so it's the management reserve. Not mine to spend, so I take it to governance and formally request.
Kai, the man who padded everything at 9 this morning now files reserves by the book.
Growth, Fenrir, Because honestly, that's the thing that finally clicked for me this whole episode. The honest number plus the 2 envelopes was the safe plan the entire time. Padding never was.
And that's exactly it. Known risk, your envelope, you spend it. Unknown risk, their envelope, you go through the process.
All right, the verdict, and it's a real one. The winner is boring and it works. Estimate honest, size 2 named reserves to real risk, track against a time-phased baseline, and surface every variance early. That's the whole task, and it's also the thing that makes finance people trust you with a bigger project next year.
And it costs you something real. It's genuinely more work up front than slapping a fat number on a page, and yes, a hostile funder might still pick at a reserve they can see.
So do we hide it after all?
No, if that's your world, you tier the reserve under governance, you attach it to named risks, you make cutting it their decision on the record. You defend it, you never bury it. A funder who cuts a reserve they can see owns that call. A funder who never saw it just blames you later.
And there's a real exception worth naming. On a truly adaptive project, you don't lock a big reserve up front at all. You fund a slice, deliver it, then decide whether to fund the next slice. The uncertainty is handled by small, frequent bets instead of one giant cushion nobody can size. Incremental funding is the reserve. If the first release proves the idea, you fund more. If it doesn't, you've lost one slice, not one giant baseline.
So, predictive, fixed scope, real capital at stake, build the baseline and the 2 reserves. Adaptive, fuzzy, fast-moving, fund it incrementally and redecide as you learn. Same goal, defend every dollar, 2 different shapes. And on exam day, the scenario tells you which one it wants. Locked scope and assigned budget, they want the baseline answer. Evolving requirements and a product owner, they want the incremental one. Read the setup, then pick the finance move that matches it.
And that closes task 6. Next in the process domain, task 7, quality, and the one calculation the exam genuinely loves, the cost of quality.
2 envelopes, 1 honest number. That is the whole hour, and it holds up.
Seconded. And earned value gets its own episode, built straight on this baseline.
Estimate honest, then defend it. I am finally sold.
If this untangled reserves for you, do the free thing that helps us most. Hit like and subscribe. It's genuinely how a small channel keeps the lights on and keeps making the next one. And if you want to actually drill this, the free practice questions and flashcards are waiting on the site. And then tell me in the comments. Have you ever watched a project blow its budget because nobody in the room would say the real number out loud? Estimate honest, defend every dollar, and I'll see you in task 7.